You don't think of yourself as someone who's afraid of love. That's not how it feels. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels like preference, like needing space, like not wanting to be suffocated, like choosing independence because you're just built that way. And when someone tells you that you have avoidant attachment, that you pull away, that you shut down, that you make people feel unwanted, your first instinct is probably to reject that. Because from the inside, you're not doing any of those things. You're just being yourself. That gap between how you experience yourself and how others experience you is exactly what this video is about, because avoidant attachment is one of the most misunderstood patterns in psychology, not because it's complicated, but because it's invisible to the person who has it. Avoidant attachment doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a specific kind of childhood environment, not necessarily one with obvious trauma or neglect, but one where emotional needs were consistently met with distance. Maybe your parents weren't cruel. Maybe they were present, functional, even loving in practical ways. But when you were upset, the message you received, directly or indirectly, was sort it out yourself. Don't make a fuss. Be strong. You're fine. So you learned to be fine. You learned that expressing emotional needs didn't get those needs met. It either got ignored, or it made the adults around you uncomfortable, or it created conflict. The safest strategy was self-sufficiency. Close the door on the need. Handle it internally. Don't depend on anyone. That strategy worked. It protected you, and your nervous system filed it away as, this is how you survive. The problem is that a strategy built for childhood doesn't get automatically updated when you become an adult. It just keeps running, quietly, in the background, shaping every relationship you enter. Here's what most people get wrong about avoidant attachment. They assume the avoidant doesn't feel things deeply. They do. The difference isn't the depth of feeling. It's what happens when feelings get too intense. There's a threshold. And when emotional closeness starts to approach it, something shifts. Not a conscious decision, more like a dial turning down automatically. You might notice it as a sudden loss of attraction to someone you were interested in yesterday, or an irritability that appears out of nowhere when a partner wants more from you, or a strong pull toward your own space, your work, your projects, your solitude, that feels less like preference and more like necessity. From the inside, this doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like clarity, like you've just seen something about this person or this relationship that confirms it's not right. The critical voice gets louder. Their habits become annoying. You start mentally cataloguing their flaws. This is deactivation. Your attachment system shutting down emotional proximity before it can trigger the anxiety that closeness has always carried. The cruel irony is that it often activates hardest with people you actually care about. The more someone matters, the more the system has to suppress. Most avoidants can do the early stages of a relationship well. The beginning is easy. There's enough distance built into new relationships. You don't know each other fully, there's no real dependency yet, everything is still light. That feels fine, that feels good even. But as the relationship deepens, something starts to close in. The other person wants more time, more vulnerability, more commitment, and each request, even reasonable ones, starts to feel like a loss of something, your autonomy, your selfhood, your ability to just be. This is what's sometimes called the intimacy ceiling. There's a level of closeness that feels manageable, and beyond it, something in you resists. Not because you don't want connection, but because deep down, connection has always carried a cost. The cost of being seen, of depending on someone, of being in a position where they could let you down. You learned early that depending on people leads to disappointment. So the safest move is to never fully depend, to keep a portion of yourself always held back, to maintain an exit, even in relationships you say you want. From the outside, avoidant attachment produces patterns that are consistent and recognisable. From the inside, each instance feels individually justified. You minimise your partner's emotional needs, not because you're cold, but because you genuinely don't understand why they can't self-regulate the way you do. You learned to handle your emotions alone. Why can't they? You go quiet under pressure. When conflict arises, you shut down or withdraw. This isn't a tactic. It's what happens when emotional intensity exceeds your threshold. The system goes offline. But to your partner, it looks like stonewalling, like you don't care. You feel most drawn to unavailable people. There's a reason avoidants often find themselves attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable, long distance, or otherwise unable to fully close the gap. That gap is comfortable. Full presence is threatening. You rewrite history when you leave. When avoidants end relationships, they often rapidly devalue what they had, focusing on what was wrong, minimizing what was good. This isn't dishonesty. It's the attachment system protecting you from the pain of what you're losing by making the loss feel justified. You're more comfortable in crisis than in calm. This surprises people, but many avoidants find it easier to show up when a partner is in genuine distress. That's a defined role, a practical task. It's the slow, ambient intimacy of a normal Tuesday that feels harder. Here's something that rarely gets said about avoidant attachment. It's lonely. Not in the way anxious attachment is lonely, the desperate, aching need for someone to close the distance. Avoidant loneliness is quieter. It lives underneath the self-sufficiency. You've built a very capable version of yourself. You function well alone. You've convinced yourself, and maybe others, that you don't really need people. But there's a difference between not needing people and not wanting them. And underneath the defended exterior, most avoidants do want closeness. They just don't know how to let it land without the alarm going off. That's the trap. The strategies that kept you safe as a child, self-reliance, emotional suppression, distance, are the same strategies that now keep real intimacy out. You're not broken, you're not cold, you're protected. But the wall that kept out pain is also keeping out the thing you actually want. Avoidant attachment is one of the harder patterns to shift, not because avoidants can't change, but because the first step requires acknowledging that there's something to change. And the system is specifically designed to convince you there isn't. The most useful reframe isn't "I need to want more closeness," it's "I need to get curious about my own discomfort." When you feel that pull toward distance, when the critical voice gets loud, when you suddenly need space, when a relationship that felt good yesterday feels suffocating today, instead of acting on it automatically, pause. Ask, what just happened? What did they say or do that preceded this? What did it remind you of? The deactivation response is fast and convincing. The work is learning to notice it before it's already made the decision for you. Therapy, particularly attachment-focused or psychodynamic work, is genuinely effective here. Not because a therapist will tell you to be more vulnerable, but because the therapeutic relationship itself becomes a practice ground, a safe place to experience closeness without the consequences that made closeness dangerous in the first place. The goal isn't to become someone who needs constant connection, it's to expand your window, to be able to move toward people when it matters, without the system treating it as a threat. If you recognised yourself in this video, the recognition itself is worth something. Most avoidants spend years, sometimes their whole lives, not realising that what they experience as preference or independence is actually a protective pattern. Seeing it clearly is the beginning of being able to choose something different. Next week, we're looking at fearful avoidant attachment, the pattern that sits at the intersection of everything we've covered so far. If anxious attachment is, "I need you and that terrifies me," and avoidant is, "I don't need anyone," fearful avoidant is both of those at the same time in the same person. It's one of the most painful attachment patterns to live with, and one of the least understood. That's next.